Okay, welcome to this video. We're going to be looking at one of my guitars. This is my Strat, and I've had a few people, good folk, ask me some questions about this, so I thought I'd explain what the deal is with this guitar. Basically, my thinking of this was to kind of recreate, to a certain extent, not completely, the kind of specs that the Stevie Vaughan #1 guitar had. So I didn't want to go for the whole kind of replica look, so I wanted to do something a little bit individual. But I've used a few other ideas from Stevie Vaughan. Basically, it's an older body made by MJT, really good company. This is actually a 3-piece body, and I'm not too bothered about getting a 1-piece because obviously the Fenders made back in the 60s were all, you know, either 2-piece or 3-piece, so that didn't really bother me too much. One thing to make a point of is Stevie Vaughan's body was actually a 62 body, and it had a 63 neck, so I don't know if that makes any difference. And so that was the body, and I thought I'd go for a nice blue colour. It's got nitrocellulose, so it's kind of vintage specs there. And then coming to the neck, this is where it gets a little bit complicated because I did some research on Stevie Vaughan's neck, and I found out that the nut width was a 1 5/8, and which is about 41.275 millimeters. I'm just reading off here. Nut width. So it's not a 42 millimeter. It's less than that. It's 41 and a bit, or 1 5/8. And that's kind of important because obviously the way Stevie Vaughan played with the thumb over the neck and even, you know, towards the nut, you know, obviously that kind of had a bit of an influence to the way he played on this, you know. So that was something I took. Now the neck, his neck had a lot of refrets obviously, so it probably started off at 7.25 or whatever it is radius. And then it's been flattened probably to a 9 or a 10-inch radius because of you know, the amount of refrets. So I actually went for a 10-inch radius. But what I might do, I might actually change it to a compound radius. Get a friend of mine to do that so that it starts at 7.25 and then ends up at 10 around here. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, but it's an idea that I might do. Fret wire, Stevie Vaughan sort of ended up using the Jim Dunlop 6100 fret wire, which is kind of like almost like a bass fret. That's really important if you're going to be doing vibrato, especially vibrato, you know, because you can really hang a note. So if I'm doing, I can do a pull down, push up. Especially on the bass string, you know, so you're going to get, it's much easier to vibrate the bigger strings on a with the bigger frets. So let's talk about. So we talked about. Oh yeah, let's talk about the Rosewood. This is actually Brazilian Rosewood. So I've had this neck custom made. Body's from MJT, but the neck is actually custom made by Luthier, and I'll tell you about him below in the description. Basically, this is the slab board, and Stevie Vaughan's wasn't a slab board; it was a veneer, so it's quite a thin piece of rosewood, Brazilian rosewood, probably. That was on the neck, so that's where mine's a little bit different. This rosewood was actually 70 years old, from New York. As you can see, this has got beautiful flame maple on it. Now, I think that flame maple actually can make the neck weaker, and it doesn't resonate so well. That's what I've heard, because Stevie Vaughan's #1 didn't have any flame; it was just a plain piece of wood. But you know, if you think about it, a Stradivarius violin and cello has flame maple. So who's to say that, you know, it doesn't make any difference? Although those violins and cellos have a really thick piece of ebony to hold it all together. So that's something you might want to think about. Okay, we're going to get up close here and just have a look at this Strat. So let's start with the pickups, because that's quite an important thing. So I've kind of researched Stevie Vaughan's guitar, and these particular pickups were custom made for me by Mojo Pickups, and I found out that Stevie Vaughan's bass pickup was the most powerful one, and I'm guessing they were between 5.5 and 6K, and that's never been confirmed, but that would be my guess. And also setting them quite low, but quite high on the treble side and low on the bass side. But really, you need to tune the guitar into itself, so there's no set rule. Just because Stevie Vaughan used a certain pickup height, it might not work with your guitar. What I've found out through the years is if your guitar has got lightweight wood, it's more resonant, then you can have the pickups a certain height. Whereas if the wood is very heavy and dense, then it might mean that you need to, I don't know, use weaker pickups or more powerful. It just depends, really. So you need to kind of think about the guitar. But generally, I think for that Texas Blue style, you need lower output. So I'm guessing these are around about 7K, 5.6K. On this tone pot here, Stevie Vaughan actually had he had two. So there's 250K pots in all of these, but on this particular one, he had some kind of a push-pull knob to cut down hum. So it's like a dummy coil in there, and then it's a different value capacitor than a normal capacitor. So that's something to take into mind. This tone here for me on this guitar, this tone here deals with this pickup, and this tone deals with these two. And what I normally do is have that full on, and this one here just rolled off maybe 2 notches or 1 notch. That's how I set it up. Also, another thing here, if I'm getting close, this D and G string pole piece, it's a little bit high actually. I'm thinking about knocking these two down on all of these pickups, because apparently that's I do find that my G and D sometimes are a little bit too loud. So that's something you don't be afraid to do. You can just literally push these in between ones down. And if you look at Stevie Vaughan's pickups, they didn't have the G and D pole pieces protruding too much. So that might be another thing that could affect the tone. Let's talk about the fret wire. On Stevie Vaughan's guitar, he wasn't using bass frets, at least unless 6100 is not his bass fret. I don't know if it is or not, but I think after a certain period of time he switched to Jim Dunlop 6100 fret wire. It's very easy to bend with this gauge, which is 11s. It's easy to bend a string with the bigger fret wire, and that's something I found really works for the kind of Albert King style fret bends. One thing you might want to bear in mind is the actual relief, which is 0.012 inches or 30 millimeters at the 9th fret. Okay, so that was his relief. So also bear in mind, when you've got lots of metal in the neck, that can actually affect the tonality of the neck, the strength of it, and so forth. So vintage style frets will obviously the wood will vibrate more. I think that's, in a way, that might be a reason to have a slightly thicker neck, like we've got here, because with the extra metal in the frets, the extra wood does help it. It's more stable and stronger. Let's look at the tremolo system. Let's bring it around here. So you can kind of see I've used a lot of gold hardware, but I haven't completely. I need to change these ones. I've put gold there, but there you go. These are raw vintage saddles, which I really love, and you don't often get string breakages, so that's really, really good. It's a Callahan bridge plate, and if I flip it over, we've got a Callahan block, and we've got the raw vintage saddles, and 5 of them. Okay, because there's quite a bit of tension when you've got 11s tuned to E. You need to have a bit of power here. The Callahan block, I'm not sure if it's the best block. I tend to find that these are over-engineered. So yeah, basically might be better to get a Fender reproduction. So that's the hardware basically. The tremolo, I'm using a Dave Gilmour Callahan arm, which is slightly shorter, but you know, if you're going to go for Stevie Vaughan, he had it on this side like Hendrix, and it kind of bent over that way, so that might affect a few things. Yeah, the truss rod adjustment is there. Nut is bone, so Stevie Vaughan used a bone nut, and that's pretty much it really. I'm just using one string tree there. There we go. So one thing I did actually really pay attention to was the rosewood, and this is 70-year-old rosewood. And in actual fact, I had two necks made out of this, but the other neck was too thin, so I got rid of that neck. But that neck actually sounded better. I don't know why. This still sounds very, very good, but for some reason, you know, you just put two pieces of wood together and they just sound great. But I'm very, very happy with this guitar. It's really come together very well. So I'm really using it on a lot of my projects. So you know, this is why I don't want to make it completely a Stevie Vaughan tribute guitar, because you know I want to use it in my day-to-day playing for sessions and my own band and so forth. And if I've got it tuned to E flat with humongous strings, yeah, I'll get the Stevie Vaughan thing, but then I won't be able to use it for anything else. So that's my thinking, is to make it more of a workable guitar, but with the, obviously, you know, the fret wire and the neck thickness. You know, as you can see there, you can just get a shot here. You can see how thick it is there. I might be able to find some photos of us actually carving this neck, so I'll put them in if I can. The most important thing as well is the string gauge. Now, I actually use 11s tuned to E standard, so they can be quite stiff, but having the big frets makes it a lot easier to bend 11s on a Strat. You know, you can easily bend even the one-fingered bend or the Albert Collins. So doing those kind of type bends with the 6100 fret wire makes it a lot easier. So that's another thing to take into account. Let's so yeah, basically we've got the pickups set low. Now the string gauge as well, Stevie Vaughan used a very fat E string. He used a 58, you know. Personally I don't, because I'm doing so many different sort of musical styles that I just like I just have a standard D'Addario set, which is I think 48 with 11 on top, which is called the Jazz Blues set or something, I think. And that just gives me more flexibility. But I mean, Stevie Vaughan, I think he used 58, 38, 28, 19, 15 and 13 tuned to E flat, and that's something you might want to take into account. String height is really important. Now I watched a really great video, which I'm going to put in my description, where a really cool guy called Nick the Riff, if you check out his YouTube channel, he interviewed a really great British guitar player called Jesse Davey. Now Jesse Davey, if you haven't heard of him, he was in a band called The Hoax, and back, I think it was in the mid-90s or around about that time, I think, I'm not too sure, but I think it was the mid-90s. He was in this great band, and he was really playing a Stevie Vaughan style, and he got all the amps, and he set his guitar up in the same way, played an E flat, and he really got that sound, and he was a great player. Another guitar player called John Moore was also in that band, two great guitar players. But anyway, Nick the Riff is interviewing Jesse Davey, and they go on about the string height. So I'm going to put that in the description below, the actual specs that Dan Erlewine took of Stevie Vaughan's guitar, the actual real string heights. But just have a listen to that interview, because it's a really interesting thing which they go on about, you know, having high action because it helps the string vibrate, and they actually talk about it a lot better than I can. So that's something you might want to check out. So that's really the Strat. Okay, so really in conclusion, this is a really fantastic guitar, and you know, I couldn't buy this guitar in the shop because it wouldn't be, you know, even the neck was sanded down to my, you know, my specifications. So, you know, have a think about making your own Strat. If you want to get close to the Super Vaughan thing, I think it's going to be easier to make it yourself than to keep buying custom shops and, you know, replicas or whatever. You know, you might want to think about making your own one, because the companies are there nowadays to sell you the parts, and they're really high quality, you know, and it's quite easy to put together. So I hope this video has been really cool for you. It has been for me. It's been really good fun to do. I'm going to tell you the amplifier that I'm playing through in this video is a little projector amp, and I'm playing through an 8-inch speaker, and that's from the 1950s. So kind of, it does sort of, especially on the bass string, kind of dies on the bass strings, but it's a really cool amp. So yeah, thanks for the video. Checking out the video, and yeah, subscribe and all that stuff. And if you want me to do any more videos of some other stuff, please let me know. And see you on the road. Take care.